All right, so this is yeah, kind of an interesting topic here or question, because it has this key element in it here further on where the filtering is, there's an overriding rule here that changes how the filtering is handled, right? The trade filtering is handled here. So we'll get to that in a moment. All right. So for the entry signals here, the SMA 100 is used as the trend filter, so fairly common, right? So price when price is above the SMA 100, then longs only, right? Long trades only, and the opposite, if price is below the SMA, then shorts only, right? So the SMA 100 is, and there we go, the dash dot white line there. That's the SMA 100. So, and then also we're using the VWAP here to add some filtering as well. So, all right. So when price is inside the first deviation bands, then long and shorts are allowed. All right. So, and not to get ahead of myself. So the VWAP that's being used is the one from Lizard Trader. All right. So this is the free one from Lizard Trader here, and it took me a moment to find it. At first, I thought I didn't have it installed because the name is a little unexpected here. So we're using it's this one here, the AMA, the amaCurrentDay VWAP. All right. So from Lizard Trader, they preface it with current day VWAP. So there's other VWAPs in there as well. I think there's like current week and current month VWAP. So that's the VWAP that we're using. This the AMA current day VWAP from Lizard Indicators here. So you'll find it in the Lizard Indicators folder. Okay. So yeah. So based on where the market is, within the VWAP here determines on, the trade direction filtering here. So again, if the price is in between the first deviation, then long and shorts are allowed, right? So we can see on the chart here, the first deviation lines are right there. Yeah, actually, let's shrink this up a little bit. There we go. All right. So we have the first deviation line here, the second deviation line, and the third deviation line there. So now what happens if we go outside the first deviation lines there, right? So if price is below the first deviation line, then longs only, right? So we can see that. So we can already see that this is basically building a counter trend type of signal here, right? So right here, right, the market is below the first deviation line. So this would mean long only signals when price is below, right? And vice versa. So if price is above the first deviation line, then shorts only, right? So basically when price gets above up here, then short signals only are allowed. Now here's the interesting and the good, all right, so all this stuff here is pretty simple to build. So here's kind of what I consider the interesting part here, is that we have an override. All right, so if price is outside the third deviation band, then the SMA 100 trend filter is bypassed, or it's overridden. So now, so remember the SMA 100 trend filter right? That's this condition up here. So we ignore that SMA 100 trend filter, and so basically any long signal is permitted when the market is below the third deviation line. Any long is allowed, and then vice versa. So if the market is way up here above the third deviation line, then any short is allowed. So that'll be the interesting part. And then we have some exit rules as well here. So yeah, we'll get back to the exit rules after we built the entry signals. Then we'll get back to the exit rules there. So all right, so I think that does it. Yeah. So let me get BloodHound open, and we'll get started. So we're going to use the button at the top of the chart here. So I already have BloodHound on the chart. Obviously, you can see BloodHound is down below here. So we're going to use the button at the top to open up the BloodHound interface. And let's see here. Let me shrink things up to begin with. There. All right. First thing we want to do is put a file name in here. And so so for these workshops, we always use the date of the workshop for the file name. All right. And oh yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. All right, so once we have a file name in here, then we can start, all of our work will get saved to this file name, so we can start building stuff here. So I'm going to switch over to the Logic tab here and hit the new button. All right. And let's see here. What shall we call this? Let's see. This is basically an SMA 20 crossover of the SMA 50 with SMA 100 and VWAP filters. All right, something like that. There we go. There's a good name there. So, all right. And normally, you're going to want this system name to actually be the file name. So, I know these workshops do teach some bad habits here. All right, so for you guys, you should be putting your individual, or the name of your file should be the actual system name here. But because I typically answer a lot of different questions, within these workshops, usually I put the system name in the logic template name. But for you guys, you should be separating all of your different systems in different files. They should all be placed in different files. You shouldn't load up different systems all in one file like I do in the workshops. So, obviously these workshops are a little different situation here. So, all right, let's pull up these rules here again. I always like to start with some simple stuff here. So this SMA 100 trend filter is pretty simple, right? Price above, then filter for long signals only, and if price is below, then filter for short signals only. All right. So that is going to be the comparison solver, right? We're comparing price to the SMA 100. So we're going to grab the comparison solver here. And let's connect that in. And let me give this a name here. Okay. So we're comparing, the closing price of the bar to the SMA 100. Right? So input A is going to be the price, the bar prices. So let's switch this over to price. There we go. And the closing price is the default there. So, oops, I double clicked. There we go. All right, so the closing price is already selected for us. And then input B, though, that's going to be our SMA 100. So let's open up this. And, the SMA is already the default indicator. So All right, so we'll change that to a 100 period. And we don't have to adjust the outputs. The default outputs is what we want. And so when we take a look at this, let's stretch this out a little bit. So when the, let's see here. Yeah. So when the closing price of the bar, right, if it's above the SMA 100, there we go, right? So there's the SMA 100. When the closing price is above, we get long outputs. And when the closing price goes below the SMA 100, we get a short output, right? So there we go. That's our basic trend filter there, right? Which is going to be filtering the crossover signals there. Yeah. I kind of skipped over. I skipped over this part here, but the entry condition is a crossover condition here. So this, so the crossing over of the SMA 20 and the SMA 50, that's the actual signal trigger, right? Is that crossover. And so the SMA 20 is the white line there, and the SMA 50 is the gray line there. All right, so that's simple ones out of the way. This crossover, the actual signal, triggering condition, right? That's a simple one as well. So let's go ahead and whip that one out. So we're going to go back to our solver nodes and go to the crossover. All right, we want the crossover solver. Let's stick this over here. There, and let's name this. All right, so we're simple enough, right? The SMA 20 crossing over the SMA 50. So let's open up our indicators once again and adjust the periods there. All right, we're good to go. Input B, same thing. We need to adjust the period. So let's open up the indicator list and adjust this to the 50 period. There we go, right? So, typically you want the faster moving average used in input A, and then you plug the slower moving average into input B. And so once we have that, there we go. So we have a couple of signals already, right? So there's a crossover there, and we have a crossover there. So again, it's the white line and the gray line crossovers. So, all right, simple enough. So now we can get into the more complex part here, which is building all the different filters for the VWAP. All right. So the first one, right, is when price is inside the first deviation, then we're going to allow longs and shorts. All right. So once again, we're comparing price to all the various deviation band lines of the VWAP, right? So that's going to be a whole bunch of comparison solvers. So let's grab a comparison solver and let's connect this in. So let's see. All right, so we're going to compare again the closing price to the VWAP, right, first deviation line there. Okay. So once again, input A, that's going to be, right, the bar price, the closing price. So we're going to change the type from indicator to price. There we go. So there's the closing price. There. And input B, well, that's going to be the VWAP first deviation line. So let's open up input B, and again we're using a lizard indicator VWAP, and it is called the current day VWAP. Yeah, we're using the current day VWAP. So let's load that in there, and we're just using the default settings here. So it's the standard deviation. And let's see, the standard deviation, and what's the other one? The full session. There we go. So there's the two main ones. All right, so now we have, right, a bunch of plots to choose from. So which plots do we want? Let's see here. So let's take a look at our rules again here. So I'm pretty sure that we can actually accomplish several of these rules with one solver. So we'll play around and see if we can do this here, right? So again, if price is inside, then we want both a long and a short output from the solver. But if price is, let's say if price is above the first deviation line, then we only want a short output. So for the upper band, if price is above the upper band, we want a short output. And if price is below the lower band, then we want a long output, right? So if price is below the first deviation, then we want a long output. All right, so there we go. So there's our long and short selections. Click OK, and let's take a look at our output. So here, right, price is in between the first deviation lines there, and we're getting a long and a short output. Perfect. And let's see, so price is above the first deviation, and we're getting a long output. So actually that's the opposite of what we want. We want a short output when price is above the first deviation line there. So let's see if we can reverse the outputs like so. Right, let's see. Right, so we just reverse the outputs, and now we actually have the inverse result. Right, everything has been inverted. So now there's no output when price is inside the first deviation lines. We do have the correct output here, right? Price is above, and we're getting a short output when price is above the first deviation line. That part's correct, but we lost the inverse here. So, so let's put this back the way it was. Right, there we go. And what we can actually do is, this is one of the rare times where we can use the invert option here. So let's set the invert output. Oh, actually, no, sorry. That is wrong. Let's see here. So let me try this. I'm going to reverse my plot selection. So for the upper band, I'm going to use that for the long output, and I'm going to use the lower first deviation line for the short outputs. And let's see here. So again, no output, getting along. So if I invert that, there we go. Okay, so that's working. Yeah, right? So here, price is below the, it's below the first deviation line, and we're getting a long output. And then when price goes inside the first deviation lines, we get a long and a short together. And then price goes above the first deviation line, and we get a short output only. So again, let's just double check our rules here. Yeah, so if price is above the first deviation line, only shorts. So yeah. All right. I think that does it. So cool. We were able to use one solver here to accomplish basically two rules. All right. So let's see. Yeah, we can kind of number these here. There we go. All right, so basically kind of like our first condition of price being inside the first deviation line, and our second condition, because really, you know, if price is below the first deviation line or if price is above the first deviation line, right? That's really kind of the same. Same rule, right? Because both of these rules are comparing against the first deviation band. So, right, but this reverse, it's the reverse condition of the same condition. So we could consider this as one condition, but but just written in reverse fashion there, right? So, yeah. So now, time to move on to this bypass or this overriding condition here, right? So when price goes outside the third deviation band, so then we're just going to ignore this trend filter, right? So again, that's this guy up here. So remember this comparison solver, right? Is what compares the close of the bar to the SMA 100, which is our dashed dot line. There. So to do this bypass or basically an override, we're going to use the if-then. All right, so we have an if-then and a relational. So these guys are called programmer nodes here. Right? If-then is a programming statement, and programming is all about comparing relationships between data. So that's why those are called programmer nodes. All right. So what we need first is we need to identify when price is outside the third deviation band there, right? So we want something similar to this comparison solver, right? We want something similar. Yeah, so we need to identify when price is outside the third deviation bands here. And when we identify that price is outside, we're going to use that to control the if-then switch, right? So if you look, right, there's an if connection, a then, and an else. So what this node is simply it's a switch. It's a switching mechanism. So either the then connection gets to the output, or the else connection is connected to the output, right? It's going to be one or the other. And the if connection controls whether the then connection goes to the output or if the else connection goes to the output, right? So the if connection controls the switch and determines which input goes to the output. So, so let's see. Yeah, so let's grab another comparison solver here. And I'm going to connect that into the result node first. All right, so this time, once again, we're comparing the closing price to the VWAP third deviation line this time. All right, so input A, that's going to be price again. So there he goes, the closing price. And input B, that will be the VWAP indicator. So let's go select that again. There it is, the current day VWAP. And again, I'm just using the default settings, so I don't have to adjust anything here. And this time, so let's see if, yeah, so if price is above the, let's see, I think I'm going to have to invert this again. Yeah. So, you know, if you remember, right, the first comparison solver that we built looking at the VWAP first deviation, you know, we want, I think we're going to want something exactly like that first comparison solver. But obviously we need to look at the third deviation band there. So for the upper, we're going to use the long, and for the lower, we're going to use the short, which is what I did in the other solver. And so now, there we go. Okay, so we're getting a short output when price goes below the third deviation, and that's because I did not invert my output yet. There we go. There. Right. So what we can see, right, most of the time, price is going to be inside the third deviation lines. And so when it is, we're going to get a long and a short together. A long and a short together. All right, there's a few more where price goes below the deviation line. Let's see, I'll just kind of use this here. Use this area to work with. All right, so I'm going to take this solver, right? So this solver that compares the close of the bar to the VWAP third deviation, right? That's what's going to control the if then there. And let's connect the output there to the result node. Let's see here. And before, yeah, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. So let's take a step back for a moment here. And we need to go back to basically condition 1 and condition 2 here, right? So actually, I'm sorry. We need to go back to the primary trend filter and combine that with these other, with these VWAP conditions, right? So again, this is our primary trend filter, comparing the closing price to the SMA 100, right? So that's this filter here, and we need to combine it with the VWAP filters here, So to do that, we need a AND node. So we need to combine these together with an AND node there. All right, so let's take a look at that first. And yeah, so yeah, here's a kind of a good area here. Right, so this, come on, there we go. So this, right, this is the first deviation bands here. So price is below, there we go. So price is below the SMA 100, right? So that's going to be a short right there. And then over here, price goes above the SMA 100. So, right, long signals only. There. So far, so good. Everything looks good. So let's see. Here we go. So take a look at this bar right here. Okay, yeah, let me get back to this in a moment here. So, yeah, so look at this bar here. So the close is just below the first deviation line, but the close is also above the SMA 100. So there you go. We're outside the first deviation line and above the SMA 100, and we're getting a long output, right? And that's what we want. So, right, price is above the SMA 100 for a long, and there we go. So when price is below the first deviation, long only, right? So there we go. So long, and we have a long output there, right? Now here, right, price, the closing price is below the SMA 100, right? And so normally, right, if price is below the SMA 100, shorts, right? We expect to see a short output. But price is also below the first deviation, and so that's only good for longs, right? So long onlys. So basically, the two cancel each other out, right? Those two conditions cancel each other out. So when price is below the SMA 100 and below the first deviation, then there's a cancellation, and so there's no, right, no output. So, or no, there's no, no long signals are allowed, right? So basically, yeah, all the, a possible short signal is canceled out because they're not allowed below the first deviation line. There. So everything's looking good so far. So once again, here's a few bars where price is below the first deviation but above the SMA 100. So long output. Of course, now price is inside the first deviation lines and above the SMA 100. So long filtering, long filtering. There we go. So there's some short signal filtering because the closing price is still inside the first deviation line. So price is below the SMA 100 and inside the first deviation line. And here we go. So now all right. So now price is outside and above the first deviation line, but it is above the SMA 100. So, right, so no signals would be allowed. So the SMA 100 has to get above the first deviation line. Let's see, it doesn't look like it's going to do that. Nope. All right, let me go back here and see if I can find some examples. There. Oh, here we go. Okay, great. There. Shrink this up a little bit. Okay, so here's our SMA 100, and here's our first deviation line there. Right. So price is above the first deviation line there. Stretch this out a little bit, right? Price is above, so that means, right, shorts only are allowed. And price is below the SMA 100, right? So there you go. So there's our limited kind of little area there that's allowed. All right. So there, our primary filtering there looks like it's working just right. So let's see here. Let's call this our filters, right? Okay, so now we can get back to the if-then node here. Right, let's connect that back in, and let's see. All right, so here's a couple of bars where the close of the bar, right, is outside the third deviation line here, right? So we can use this to kind of test our if-then, right? So when price is inside, when price is inside the third deviation lines, then we want this filtering to occur, right? So we're going to connect this to the then node, right? And let's see. So let's analyze this short output that we're seeing. So price is above the first deviation line. So here's our first deviation band. So price is above, and for a few bars here, we can see price is below the SMA 100, right? So price is trapped in between, and so that's when that's our filtering for short signals. That's the condition to allow short signals to occur. So all right, so things look good. Let's continue. So things still look good here. And yeah, look at that. So the closing price, right, pops outside the first deviation band here. But it is below the SMA 100. So no shorts are allowed anymore because the close went below the first deviation. So there, no longs allowed anymore. And here we go. Here's what I want to see. I just want to confirm. Right. So the closing price is inside the first deviation bands, and now price went above the SMA 100. So there you go. So that would be long signals only. Right. So far so good. Yep. So our I guess our typical filtering here, we know it's getting through the if then just fine. So let me go back to, let's see. Okay, here's the couple of bars here, right, where the close is above the third deviation. If we go back to our rules, right, so if price is in the upper third deviation band, then any short is allowed, right? But I don't have a short output, right, on these bars here, right? I'm expecting to see a short output on those two bars because the close is above the third deviation line here. And the reason why is because if we look at our if then, there's nothing connected to the else, right? And if I look at this solver, right, this solver actually provides the correct output, right? Look here. So we have two bars with a short only output, right? There's no long output, right? And so these two bars with short only correlate with the two bars here that I had marked, right, where the close is above the third deviation, right? So again, that's what we're looking for. So if price is in the upper third deviation, then shorts are allowed. So we want to get a short output no matter what, because remember, we're overriding the SMA 100 trend filter, right? So we're overriding this filter here, and so this solver, which is controlling the if then, also has the correct output when price is either above the third deviation or if the price is below the third deviation. So I can actually connect that into the else right there. And so now if we take a look, and that's not what I was expecting. Let's see here. Okay, so you know what? I am going to have to clean up what goes into the if connection. Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. So typically, and this is even true for this case here, I thought maybe I might have a slight exception here. But typically when you're using the if then, you want long and short together or no output. So basically I need to strip away this short only output so that there is no output. Right. And so here, we're going to use a long short modifier to do this. So let's get this connected up so you can see exactly what I mean. And the mode, let's say the mode, let's use the minimum mode here, right? So look, you can see there when I change the mode to minimum, so now either we have long and short together or no output, right? So that's typically what you want when you use the if-then node, right? So I'd say 99.99% of the time, that's the type of output that you want to control the if connection. So let's connect that into the if connection. And then connect the if. Okay, now, there we go. So now on these two bars, I get a short output. So let me see if there's any areas where, yeah, well, no. Actually, yeah, maybe we do have a couple of bars over here. Yeah. So it looks like we have at least one bar there. Yeah, you know what? It's kind of hard to see that third deviation line. So let's outer bands. Yeah, let's make this a little easier to see. Yeah, even that's not very good. All right, there we go. So now it's a little easier to see the second and third deviation lines there. So here we can see, right, the close of that bar just barely went outside the third deviation line. And there's our long output, right? Because, yeah, that meets this condition right here, right? So price is outside the third deviation line, and if price is in the lower third deviation, then any long is permitted. Right? So, all right. So let me clean things up here a little bit. All right, so put a name in there. Okay, so I just named my nodes here, right? So it's always good to name everything, so that way you know what it's doing later on. So my long short modifier, right? I'm using the minimum mode here, right? So I just named it min. And what's coming out of this if-then node, what's really coming out of it is basically all the filtering rules, right? It's really all the filtering rules. So yeah, it's all of this right here. Well, sorry, except this. So here, let's all right. Yeah, so what's coming out of the if-then node is all of our filters, right? The combination of all of our filtering rules coming out of one point. And I think that really is the key kind of to this question here, right? Because obviously the entry signal part, right, the crossover, that's pretty darn simple to accomplish. Right, so now the next step, the final step, is to combine our entry signal with the filters, right? So we need another AND node, and so we can now connect our filters in with our signals, and that should be it. So let's take a look through the chart and verify the signals. Let's see. All right, here's a short signal right off the bat. So the SMA 20 crossed the 50, and the close of the bar is inside the first deviation bands, and price is below the SMA 100. So that one looks correct. Yeah. All right. So let me go back to the. Go back to the end of the chart here, and so we have a long signal. So once again, price is inside the first deviation bands, and the close just barely popped above the SMA 100, and we have a cross up of the two SMAs. Right, we have a cross up. Perfect. And let's do one other thing here that will kind of help us here. So what I want to do is I want to be able to see all of the crossover signals, right? I want to be able to see all of these crossover signals. So even if they're filtered out, I still want to be able to see those crossover signals there, right? So to do that, what I can do is I can grab two OR nodes like this, and I need another OR node, and so I can take, so the solver that I want to see in addition to the actual signals, I'm going to take that solver, plug it into an OR node, and this OR node, I'm going to reduce its output, right? So there, let's take a look here, right? So if we look at the crossovers here, right, the output is at 1, positive 1 and negative 1, right, for the outputs there. And now if I look at this OR node, so remember this OR node, I reduced the output here. Here, I'll put it at 0.33, right? So I'm using the slider here and I put it at 0.33. And so if I go to the chart, so there, I can see the output, but it's only at 0.33, right? So there's no signal. If you look, the racing stripes are gone because it's not enough of an output to actually generate a racing stripe signal. But I can see it on the chart. So now, with this OR node, I can connect that into the OR node, and so now I can see the full signals, and I can see the reduced output of the crossover solver. So now I can see both of them together coming out of this OR node. So if we take a look, so there, right? So there's the actual long signal that qualified, and then over here I can see, oh yeah, there was a crossover, right? We do have a cross down, but the closing price is above the SMA 100, right? So that means long signals, and price is inside the first deviation band. So this cross down was filtered out, and so I could see that there was a crossover, and I can verify that yes, this cross down was filtered out accordingly. There. So that's how I can quickly kind of go through and make sure that all the filtering's working correctly, because I can see the crossovers at the same time. So here, let's see here. Here we have a long cross up. Let's see. Price is below the first deviation. So that means long signals only. But price is also below the SMA 100. And so that's a short signal filter. So the short signal filter and the long signal filter cancel each other. Yeah. So basically, yeah, the filtering canceled each other. So no crossover is permitted. And same thing over here. So on this bar, right, we have a crossover, but the filtering cancels itself. Price is below the first deviation band, so that's a long filter, but price is below the SMA 100, so that's a short filter. So the two filters cancel each other. There. All right, so here is a long crossover, and price is inside the first deviation and above the SMA 100. So long and long filter. So there you go, that got through. All right, so we have a cross down. So I can see down here, we have a short crossover, but price is above the SMA 100 and inside the first deviation band. So that's a long filter. So yeah, so the filtering is for long crossovers only. So this short crossover got filtered out. So we have a long crossover, but we're below the SMA 100. So yeah, that long crossover got filtered out. So I think everything looks like it's working good. Oh, here's a bunch of signals. Let's check these out. So we have a cross down, and the close is below the SMA 100. So, all right. That's good for a short cross. Here, the close is above the SMA 100 and inside the first deviation bands. So that's good for a long. And now price is below the SMA 100, so that's good for a short. And inside the bands. All right. So yeah. So far, everything looks good and correct. All right. Yeah. So Dean is suggesting, yeah. So in order to generate more signals, we can adjust one of the rules here. So instead of the so this overriding rule here, or this bypassing rule, instead of being outside the third deviation, it could be inside the third deviation. But if that happens, then all of this conflicts with all of this. So how do you reconcile that, Dean? How would you reconcile the conflict, of these rules now conflicting with these rules? So I need a little more detailed explanation on that. So, but as we can see, actually, we got plenty of signals here to work with. So I don't think we need to adjust the system in any way. So and we actually have the entry signals already built. So yeah, so I think we're good to go there. So now, I guess I don't see any other follow-up questions. So I will move on to the exit signals here. So I think this is going to be a little more complex. All right, so for the exit signals, we have two types of exit signals, and they both have a prerequisite. So, all right, so basically the exit signals are for, and are to occur, right, when price reaches the next higher, right, or lower deviation line, right? So let's see here. So for this long signal here, right, then the exit signal, we'd be paying attention, I guess, when when price gets to the next higher deviation band up there, right? And then that's when we start looking for these various conditions here, right? So one of them is this price inversion, so a price inversion doesn't really is not typically used for intraday charts. If you do a Google search on price inversions, typically on a broader scale, it's applied to daily charts. So we do have kind of a little clarification here. So in this case, basically a price inversion is just the uptrend stalling out, right? It's just simply put the uptrend stalling out here. So a little clearer definition here. So when price is within one ATR, of a deviation line, right, or the next deviation line, and then we're basically looking for a pullback, right? And I guess you could loosely call a pullback like the trend stalling for a moment, right, before it continues on, right? So a pullback, you only know if something's a pullback after the trend continues, right? So the trend has to continue for a pullback to actually be defined. Right. So otherwise, if the trend kind of stalls out, then I guess you could say that price is basically kind of going into an inversion there. So, and so more specifically, what we're looking for is if price stays below the highest price of the last 5 bars, right? So that, so with this combination here, so really I guess we could say that the price inversion is looking for the trend to not break out to new highs after 5 bars, right? So we're gonna track the highest bar and make sure that price keeps moving higher within 5 bars. And if it doesn't, then we're going to generate an exit signal, right? So let's see. That's going to that's going to be a combination of things here. So let's put an indicator on our chart that's going to identify, the highest price, of the last 5 bars, or the lowest price of the last 5 bars, depending, right? So let's see. There's a couple of things, I can think of the Donchian channel. Let's see, where is it? So the Donchian channel, right, will show you the highest price and the lowest price of, X number of bars, whatever the period is. But what's going to look a little cleaner is in the Shark Indicators folder, we just happen to have a tool here called Chameleon. And with Chameleon, I can set the look back period to 5. And I have my Chameleon set up to show the high bounds and the low bounds. And so if we put this on the chart, right there, so we can see, like right here is a good good, easy example to see, right? There's the high, and it'll plot forward, right, for 5 bars. So, and let's actually, let me add an, so, yeah, I'll make this, no, actually, I'll keep it the way it is, yeah. So, so you always have to add, clarify to yourself, when you say 5 bars, does 5 bars include the bar that made the high? Because in this example, it does include the bar that made the high. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it's 4 bars after the high bar, and it's 5 bars including the high bar, right? So you do have to clarify with yourself, these kind of technical details here. Do you include the bar or do you not include the bar? So let's include the bar here, because that'll generate some exit signals a lot faster. If we do include the actual highest bar there, it'll generate signals, exit signals a little quicker. So yeah, so there's the right chameleon that shows us the high and the lowest price, right, for 5 bars, right, or 4 additional bars. So there's a visual aid there. And what else do we need? Yeah, as far as indicators go, I think that's the only visual aid that we need to put on the chart there. So yeah, so now we can start building. And let's see here. So we're going to create a new logic template. There. All right, so we're creating an exit signal for the SMA crossover system there. All right. So let's add this condition here. Let's identify when price gets within 1 ATR of a deviation line. And let's see here. Okay, price gets within. All right, so I'm gonna try this using a support resistance solver here. So that way I can minimize the number of solvers, right? So your instinct when you see a rule like this, all right, we want to compare price to the deviation lines. Your instinct should be comparison solver, right? To identify when price gets within 1 ATR or some distance of a plot. So your instinct should be comparison solver. But the VWAP indicator, right? It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It has 7 plots. So if we use the comparison solver, we would have to create 7 comparison solvers. And sometimes you might just have to do that. But this time, I think we can do this using the support resistance solver and do it all within one node. So let's give it a shot and see if we can accomplish this with the support resistance. Okay. So we're stretch that out a little bit. All right. So we want to know when the close of the bar, right, gets within 1 ATR of the VWAP deviation lines. Okay, so the mode that we want, right, is we're looking for price to come within this 1 ATR distance of the deviation lines. And so that is going to be tailwind mode, right? So tailwind mode tells you when price, in this case is going to be the closing price. When price gets close tailwind is when price is close to your support resistance lines, right? So for a possible bounce off of it. So we're just using it for proximity. We're not trying to identify a bounce, but we're just using it for proximity. Well, actually, that's all the support resistance solver does. So the support resistance doesn't actually identify bounces. It just tells you proximity. So, all right, and we're going to use the VWAP indicator for the SR lines. So we're going to set this to true, right? So using an indicator for SR lines set to true. So there we go. All right, so the indicator, input section opens up for us, right? If we turn this back off, right, you can see it disappears, and then set it to true, and the indicator input reappears. So, okay, so let's put the VWAP in there. So let's open this up. Go to Lizard Indicators, and the current day VWAP is right there. And so, again, the reason why we're using a support resistance solver is I can select all of the plot lines all at once. And the one exception is we don't actually want the VWAP line itself, right? So the exits are based off of the standard deviation lines. So we're going to uncheck the actual VWAP line. And we can see that we have all the standard deviation lines selected here. All right, so we have the indicator plugged in to the solver. We're using the closing price of the bar. And so now we need to set the distances up. So the maximum distance is already set to 1 ATR. So the ideal distance, I'm going to open that up, and we're going to set that to 1 ATR as well. So there we go. Okay. So now let's look at the outputs. So we want an output when the close is at 1 ATR, right? The ideal distance. Let's see, at 1 ATR or more, that's off. Let's see, no support resistance. Yeah, no output. And if price actually equals the support resistance line or the indicator plot, then we want an output there too. Yeah. So I think that, yeah, that does it. So let's look at the chart and kind of take a look. Right? So if the close of the bar is, above one of the deviation lines but within 1 ATR, right, we're going to get a long output. And if the closing price is below the deviation line but within 1 ATR, we're going to get a short output, right? So that's why sometimes we're getting a long output, sometimes we're getting a short output. Depends if the closing price is above or below the deviation line there. So now we're using the support resistance to identify proximity, but we don't need or we don't want the support resistance to tell us if price is above or below. So in other words, what that means is we want both a long and a short output together, right? We just want to know, is the close within 1 ATR, right? And that's a non-directional condition, right? Price being close to something is non-directional. Right? It's proximity. So that doesn't tell you the direction of the trade. So what we're going to use is a long-short modifier here. And we can use the addition mode there. There. Right? And so now we can see we're getting a long and a short together. Right? So anytime that closing price gets within 1 ATR there. Long and a short together. Let's see. All right, so the next step here. All right, so the next step is going to be identifying if price basically stalls out or inverts. Let's see here. So I'm going to have to build some kind of reverse condition here. Let's see. So we can definitely identify when a new high is made, or when a new low is made. And then I think if we invert that, that might get us what we want. Yeah, we're just going to have to experiment here. Yeah, because I don't think I've ever built anything like this before. This specific type of condition here. So let's see here. So we're going to grab a comparison solver to identify when the high makes a new high, right? If the high makes a new high, that's what we want to identify. And so that's going to be a comparison solver, right? So we're comparing the high of the current bar to the high of the previous bar, right? So obviously if the current bar is higher than the previous bar, then we know a new high has been made. And actually in this case, yeah, I'm not sure. We might actually have to compare the high of the current bar to chameleon. But actually, I think we can do this without using chameleon. So let's give this a go. All right, so input A, that's going to be price, right? So so since we're generating, so we have to keep in mind we're generating exit signals, all right? So if our entry signal is a long, right, so it's a long entry signal, then our exit needs to be a short, all right? So, yeah, so if price inverts, if price fails to make new highs, then we need to generate a short signal. All right, hopefully that all makes sense. So on the short outputs, we're going to be looking at the high price, right? We want the high price to keep making new highs. Otherwise, we're going to generate a short signal there. And so for a long signal, right, it's going to be the opposite. We're going to look at the low price. So the low of the bar needs to keep making new lows. Otherwise, we're going to generate a long signal to exit a short, right? Because remember, the exit signals are in the opposite direction as your entry signals. Right? So if we got an entry signal to go short, then we want a long exit signal to, as the exit. We want a long as the exit to exit that short entry signal. Okay, so now input B, let's see, price. Right, yeah. Yeah, we're still missing the displacement for the input type of price. So we are going to have to use chameleon here. Yeah. So for input B, I put that back to indicator value so that we can use chameleon. So let's go plug in chameleon. There it is. And remember, we're using a look back period of 5. All right. And so the plots that we want is we want to compare the high of the bar to the high bounds plot, right? To the high plot of chameleon. And so we're looking for a short output, right? A short exit signal. And so the low plot of chameleon, that's going to be used for longs. And we need to set a displacement of 1. So the displacement acts as a way to look backwards in time, right? So effectively, this displacement allows us to look at chameleon 1 bar back. Right? And let's see here. So we want to reverse the outputs, I believe. Yeah. So we can see here, right? The highs are moving higher, and we're getting this short output, right? And so here, the highs stop moving higher. And so we're no longer getting a long output. And then once the highs start moving higher again, we get a long output. All right, so as long as there's new highs, we're getting a long output. Okay, and so for the long output, we're going to reverse that as well. Yeah, and there we go. So here, right, we can see a new low is made. And here, some new lows are made here, right? And we're getting a long output. Okay, so far so good. All right, I think I have a way to accomplish this. All right, so we've identified when new highs or new lows are being made. And of course, we need to extend that out for 4 more additional bars. So we're going to use the signal extender. And we're going to reduce the extend signals 4. We're going to reduce that down to 4. So let's see here. Yeah. Right. So if we look at, again, this area here, right? So the highs, so all along here, we're getting like new highs, new highs, new highs, new highs. At least we're getting new highs, right, within that 5 bar period, right? But here, or at least, let me move this over here, or I'll put it in between there, right? So here, new highs stop being developed for a while. And if we look at the output, right, we're getting a short output until the new highs stop, right? When the new highs come to an end after 5 bars, then the short output stops for 3 bars, right? So we have 3 bars of no new highs, and then we get a new high again, and then the short output, right, picks back up. And looking quickly, the same thing, right, with the lows. So yeah, let's move this over here. Come on. There. There. All right. So here, let's see where. Oh, whoops. Sorry, I had this in the wrong spot. There we go. All right. So we get some new lows, and then another new low picks up. But then after 5 bars, right, there's no new lows. And so the long output comes to an end, right? And there's no long output in this area here, right? No long outputs here because there's no new lows. And then finally we get to a new low is made right here. And then the long output starts up again once we get a new low. Okay, so everything looks good. Oh, shoot. I deleted my VWAP, and it would be really cool if NinjaTrader had an undo. All right, hold on. Let me get my VWAP back on the chart. Yeah, all right, there we go. Okay. So now the next step that we need, right? So basically we've identified the opposite of what we want, right? We've identified when new highs are being made, but we want to, what we truly want to identify is, when these new highs come to an end, right? So we want to, right, in other words, we want to identify when the price stays below, right, the highest price for the last 5 bars, right? So in other words, when the new highs come to an end, that's what we really want to identify. So, for example, right, we want to identify that bar there with the short output, because the short output came to an end, right? And the same for the longs, right? We want to identify when the long output comes to an end. And we can do that, let's see, with some Boolean logic. All right, so I think we need I think it's an XOR. Let's see, and let's see, an inverter? No, a look back. Oops. There. Yeah. All right, something like that. But I need some more. Let's see here. Yeah, I need to mark up my chart a lot here. There. All right. So I put some rectangles where I want to see a signal, right? Because that's when our short comes to an end or when the long comes to an end. And then I put diamonds right at the beginning points, right, of when the output starts, because I don't want to see signals there, right? And the way the Boolean logic works, is, right, I am getting a signal on the first bar, right? So where my diamonds are, right? I marked the first bar when the output turns back on. So, so I'm just trying to figure out how to remove that. Oh, all right. I think I might have figured it out. Hey, there we go. All right. Yeah, so there's no signals where my diamonds are anymore. So I think that did it. Yeah. All right, so if we kind of break this down a little bit here, let's look at what we did. Let's see. Oh, you know what? This XOR node actually doesn't do anything. There, that's actually what I meant to do. No, that doesn't do anything either. Okay. So there, I had an extra XOR node that wasn't doing anything. Yeah, that's what messed me up is, all right, originally I had an XOR and an AND node, and what confused me was I didn't have my XOR node connected up correctly because I forgot to, right, connect both of these nodes in here. So, and let's see. Oh, that's not what I had before either. Oh, right. Sorry. There we go. Come on. Get that connected. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Okay. All right, so let's break this down here and see what's working here, or see how this is working. So the XOR node is a inverse OR node. So yeah, if you really kind of want to understand what the XOR node does, yeah, if you simply just Google, X and XOR node logic, it'll bring up some spreadsheets kind of showing you how the XOR node works, with inputs versus the output. But bottom line is, right, we can see that we go from these continuous outputs here, And then with the XOR node, right, I have the outputs delayed. So this lookback node, I'm using the displacement here. So it's doing a 1 bar delay. Right, bottom line is this is providing a 1 bar delay. So if I connect this in, right, and we look at the output, right, we can see, let's look at the long output, right, we can see that all the long outputs have been shifted forward 1 bar. Because remember, the long outputs start where my little diamond is, and they end before getting to the rectangle. But now we can see the long output starts after the diamond and ends inside the rectangle, because the long output has been shifted forward or delayed by 1 bar, right? So I get this offset going into the XOR node, right? So I have the normal output, and then I get this delayed output going into the XOR node, right? And so the XOR node tells me when there's a difference. So the XOR node, it's giving me the first bar, right, where the long output turns on, and it's giving me the last bar. Because remember, so from the lookback node, right, the last bar is inside the rectangle because the output has been shifted forward. So the XOR node is giving me both of these outputs, but it's giving me when the outputs do not match. All right, so in other words, I'm getting the first bar and the last bar. Right? Again, first bar with where the diamond, and the last bar where the rectangle. So now I need to strip out the first bar, right, where the diamonds are. I need to strip out the first bar. And so that's where the AND node comes in, because, all right, our delayed, right, our delayed output here, our from our displacement, right, there's no output where the diamonds are. So I can use the AND node to clean up the XOR node, right? So the AND node gets rid of where the diamonds are, because the XOR node has an output there, but the lookback node, right, there is no output where the diamonds are. And so therefore the AND node strips out the output where the diamonds are. So that's kind of the short version of how this all works. All right, so moving on to the next step. So I think we can take our proximity to the deviation line and connect that into the AND node. Here. So what's coming out of this AND node is our first exit signal condition there. It's our first one. So if, let's say, price was up here and it produced a short signal, and then price was coming down into the upper first deviation line, right? That would be our long signal there to exit, right, the short signal, if one occurred there. So now this long signal, this is the exit signal. And let's switch over to the entry signals. There, and I thought we had, oh, there we go. Yeah, we do have. Yeah. So let's mark that there. There we go. So there's our long entry. And then over here, we get our exit signal. And there we go. So that is our exit for our long signal. There, something like that. So let's work on exit signal number 2 here. Or, yeah, all right, so this one's pretty simple, right? So if price hits the SMA 20, then an exit signal. Well, all right, so we have an entry there. Yeah, so we're going to get an exit immediately. So remember, the white line is the SMA 20, right? So that's the white line there. So that one will be really straightforward and easy to do. So let's grab, where is a crossover solver, and we're simply going to identify when the close of the bar crosses over the SMA 20. All right, so input A, that's going to be the closing price, right? So we're going to switch over to price as our input, and the close of the bar is the default there. And so input B, that'll be the SMA 20. So let's open up the indicator and switch that to 20, period. So now if so if we're in a long trade, then when the close crosses below the SMA 20, right? Yeah, we want a short signal as our exit to a long trade. So there we go. So the crossovers are correct. And so now we can just grab another AND node. So remember, we need our prerequisite, right, of price. Yeah, so we need a prerequisite of price being, close to our next deviation line there, right? And remember, that's basically what we have here, right? This is our prerequisite to, all right, that's our prerequisite there to both of the exit rules. Okay. So we're going to combine our prerequisite with our crossover condition, like so. And let's see here. There we go. There. So we do have, yeah, we have price crossing over the SMA 20 a bunch of different times there, and it's right next to the upper first deviation line. So there. All right, so this would be exit rule number 2, and now we need to combine both of these together with an OR node. And there we go. Now we have both exit signals combined together. So let's find some entry signals and some exit signals. Okay, so there's a long entry. And let's find the first. All right, yeah, so there's an exit signal immediately afterwards. There, so that bars our long. Right, so there's our long, and then, yeah, we get our exit signal right afterwards, because, yeah, price had crossed below the SMA 20, so that was the crossover exit signal there. So let me find another signal. Okay, there's a short. All right, there's a short entry. And so let's look at the exits. Okay, and so there is our exit. And that exit, and let's see, this exit is because we didn't get any more lows. Yep. Yeah, so the new lows came to an end. Yeah, so not enough new lows. And yeah. All right. So things are looking pretty good. Let's just find one more signal here. All right, here's a long signal. There we go. And let's find the exit for it. And let's see. All right, the exit's way up here. There's our exit. There. Now, we definitely had some price crossing the SMA 20, but of course that was not near, the first deviation line there. All right.